He was the silent shadow of G-Unit, the roar between verses, the steady gaze amidst bullets and betrayals, the witness to 50 Cent's rise and also to his own disappearance. Tony Yayo wasn't just a backup rapper. He was the echo of the streets, the rough voice of confinement, the figure that embodied the real fear behind sudden success. For a time, he was the heartbeat within the G-Unit monster, the symbol of unwavering loyalty, the soldier who fell and rose again. But behind the impassive face that appeared in million-dollar videos was a man haunted by ghosts, fame, prison, betrayal, and oblivion. The ingredients of a life marked by the harshness of the game and the price of never giving up. Tony Yayo's story isn't that of just another rapper. It's the story of someone who was at the top without ever stepping on stage. An artist who entered the game already trapped in a system that doesn't forgive. While his brothers in arms filled stadiums, he watched from a cell. Yayo became a legend before releasing his first album. He was on magazine covers without ever dropping a live verse. He was the symbol of the streets, the real guy behind the persona. And when he finally got to speak, the world had already changed. Before the world knew his name, before he was on everyone's lips, Tony Yayo, born Marvin Bernard in South Jamaica, Queens, was already fighting for his life. He was childhood friends with 50 Cent and Lloyd Banks. Together they formed G-Unit, the group that would revolutionize 2000s rap with violent, authentic mixtapes, recorded between shootings, arrests, and real threats. But when 50 Cent signed with Eminem and Dr. Dre in 2002, when In Da Club blew up and G-Unit became a global brand, Tony Yayo wasn't there. He was in jail. Just before success arrived, he was arrested for illegal weapons possession. And while his name was being chanted by millions, he was cleaning his cell and listening to beats on a fellow inmate's radio. To many, his face on the covers was a mugshot. A t-shirt with his name was the closest the public could get to him. On the streets, his name commanded respect, but in the industry, he was just a mystery. When Tony Yayo was released from prison in late 2003, the rap world was waiting for him. Not because they knew his voice, but because he represented something many had lost: credibility. He was freed just as G-Unit released their debut group album, Beg for Mercy. Although he didn't participate in all the recordings, his presence was constant. The name Yayo was everywhere. In every 50 Cent rhyme, on every fan's shirt. His return felt like an apparition. He wasn't just a rapper. He was the urban legend who had survived. His first official verse was like a bullet fired straight from Queens's guts. Raw, direct, unfiltered. Rap didn't expect him, but it needed him. To the fans, Yayo was already a street hero. To the industry, he was a ticking time bomb. That year, Tony Yayo released Thoughts of a Predicate Felon, his first and only studio album. It was more than a record. It was a confession, a belated introduction from someone who never got the chance to build from the ground up. The album debuted at number 2 on the Billboard 200, with tracks like So Seductive, produced by 50 Cent, and collaborations with Eminem, Obi Trice, Lloyd Banks, and Young Buck. Yayo finally had a microphone, and he used it like a weapon. But even in success, there were cracks. Critics saw him as a secondary G-Unit product. Some called him the least talented of the group. Others said he was only there out of loyalty. Yayo, however, stood tall. He knew what he had lived. He knew he wasn't a character. He was the street, the guy who had survived everything the others only rapped about. After releasing his album, Tony Yayo slowly faded from the spotlight. Not because he didn't want to be there, but because the rap world was moving faster than ever. G-Unit began to fracture. Internal conflicts, members leaving, and the evolution of the sound left Yayo in limbo. While 50 Cent became a businessman, Yayo turned into an increasingly silent figure. He was still around, yes, but no longer leading verses or making cover stories. The industry started to treat him like an accessory, but deep down, he was still the same soldier who had walked through the shadows. Only now, those shadows were colder, longer, and quieter. As G-Unit began to crumble, Tony Yayo stayed, silent, loyal, constant, but invisible to many. Young Buck was expelled. Lloyd Banks started to drift away. 50 Cent's shine endured, but the empire was no longer solid. And among the rubble, Yayo's figure began to fade. The man who was once the group's street symbol was becoming a supporting actor. His verses were rare. His name barely appeared in credits. There were no new albums, no viral singles, no world tours. There was something worse than failure: oblivion. Tony Yayo, the man who had waited for his moment from behind bars, was once again facing silence. But this time, there were no metal bars. It was indifference. It was an industry that moved on without looking back. Yayo never betrayed. Not when G-Unit was bleeding. Not when the media ignored him. Not when everyone wrote him off. He stood by 50 Cent in interviews, tours, projects, even when it was clear he was no longer a business priority. While others broke ties over contracts or egos, Yayo stayed. Because to him, this wasn't just music. It was brotherhood. It was surviving together. It was dying under the same flag. But loyalty comes at a price, one that isn't always repaid with respect. In 2011, 50 Cent publicly declared he was tired of carrying the group, that he had wasted energy trying to keep everyone together, that they weren't as ambitious as he was. The words cut like knives, and though Yayo didn't respond with anger, the damage was done. He felt betrayed, invisible, used. In the years that followed, Tony Yayo vanished. There were no official statements, no albums or singles, just an uncomfortable silence. Then, in 2014, he said the most honest line of his career. "I'm done. I'm done with the music. I don't even care anymore." It was a raw confession, not of defeat, but of exhaustion. Yayo wasn't speaking like a man beaten by lack of talent, but like someone worn down by the industry, by empty promises, unfulfilled expectations, and the feeling of being used, then forgotten. For him, the dream had become routine. The studio was no longer a refuge. The stage no longer excited him. Music, his salvation, had become his cage. Away from the spotlight, Tony Yayo went back to basics, to Queens, to his neighborhood, to his people. There were no private jets or red carpets, but there was peace. He walked the same streets where he grew up, spent time with his son, looked back on his past like a war album, with pride, but also with scars. As the industry turned to new stars, Yayo watched from afar, with the calm of someone who no longer had anything to prove. Because he knew something others didn't, surviving the system is a victory in itself. And not everyone makes it. Many called him a sidekick, others filler, some just a tag-along. But they were all wrong. Tony Yayo was much more. He was the reflection of a generation that lived success from prison. That came back and still got ignored. That loved music, even if it didn't love them back. His story was real, raw, painful, and for that very reason, necessary. While others collected awards, he collected scars. And while the world celebrated its idols, he stood as a reminder of what rap can also do to you. break you from the inside, leave you voiceless, and then ask why you stopped shouting. Tony Yayo had said he was done, that he didn't care anymore. But those who truly love music, even when they walk away, never really leave. Yayo came back, not with fireworks or viral albums, but with small steps, freestyles, mixtapes, quiet collaborations. He returned to the mic not as the forgotten soldier, but as the veteran who had survived the battlefield. Young rappers looked at him differently now. He was no longer the guy in the background of 50 Cent's videos. He was the one who had been there from the start, the one who walked through real fire, the one who didn't trade loyalty for fame. And in an era where everyone chased virality, Tony Yayo represented something else: permanence. Rap culture, with all its twists and turns, started to look back. Documentaries, retrospective interviews, YouTube specials. Everyone wanted to know what happened to Tony Yayo. Yayo began appearing on podcasts, on hip-hop history channels, in interviews with no beats, just truth. Calmly, without bitterness, with no need to exaggerate, he told his story. The betrayals, the time behind bars, the tours, the losses, the silences, and, above all, the loyalty. Because if there was one thing that defined Tony Yayo, it wasn't a hit or a fight or a scandal. It was his endurance, his ability to not break, to not sell out, to not pretend. Many rappers claimed to represent the streets. Tony Yayo was the street. He lived what others only rapped about. He paid the price. And he lived to tell the tale. In 2023, Tony Yayo released The Loyal, a mixtape with a title that needed no explanation. It wasn't a marketing strategy. It was a confession, a flag, a warning. The cover was sober. The lyrics were sharp. He wasn't trying to compete with Drake, nor make pop star duets. He just wanted to speak. And this time, the world listened. Young rappers mentioned him with respect. Veterans of the game embraced him as one of their own, not because of the charts, but because of the story. Yayo became the symbol of the soldier who never betrayed, who endured prison, oblivion, public humiliation, and still came back to the mic with his head held high. Tony Yayo never won a Grammy. He never topped the Billboard Hot 100. He was never the critics' favorite. But that doesn't matter, because there are things more important than awards, like consistency, loyalty, truth. Tony Yayo represents everyone who was forgotten, everyone who endured in silence, everyone who said no when it would have been easier to give up. Today, his name needs no introduction, not because he's everywhere, but because he stands for something real, something that can't be bought, something that doesn't die with a rough patch. Many idols were lost in fame. Yayo got lost in silence, and it was there that he found himself. He no longer seeks applause, no longer chases contracts. He doesn't need to be on the cover to earn respect, because his story is already written, the one of the man who started at the bottom, who vanished when everyone else was rising, who was betrayed by his own shine, and who returned without asking for permission. Tony Yayo is not just a former member of G Unit. He's a symbol of resilience, the reflection of a rap that won't sell out, the echo of a hard era, and the living proof that some voices, even when quiet, can never be silenced. Today, when his old verses play, when fans shout, "Free Yayo," as a tribute, when a young rapper names him as an influence, the world remembers. There was a man who never gave up,